In this video clip we're going to do a hopper pattern. I'm using a reasonably large hook, 10 or 12. Often use a wet fly hook for this because the weight is really unimportant. The fly will float anyway. It's just easier to spin the hair on a stronger hook. Take the thread to the base of the bend and we're going to tie in an extended body. The extended body we're going to manufacture out of yellow antron. You can use yellow wool, same thing. Spin the fibres as tight as you can get them. Hold them in your fingers like this. And then you've got them spun up really nice and tight. And fold them in half around the point of your scissors and let go. A little bit of a helping hand to get that twist all the way up to the end. And we're going to tie in that extended body, approximately the same length as the hook shank. Like that. We're going to unwind the tags of that yarn. Take the tag that is rotating anti-clockwise around the twist and tie that in. The other tag we're going to wind around the body to form a yellow abdomen. And the reason for this is simply because most grasshoppers have a yellow ventral surface which shows up from underneath, and it's a distinctive feature, a trigger if you will, potentially at least for the fish. Tie off that tag end as well. And move our body ready manufactured. Another potential trigger for the fish is the red of the underwing. We're going to tie in a small amount of calf tail or duck tail. It's red, in this case calf tail, just to provide a hint of that flash of colour. We're going to trim that off. And then we're going to tie in a wing of elk hair. We'll use elk because it isn't going to spin as much as deer hair is going to. Take out the loose fibres and the fluff, and we're going to stack this wing in a hair stacker to even up the tips. Take it out the stacker with the points facing towards the bend of the hook, just about the same length as the extended body. Pinch and loop in place and pull tight. And this is a pattern that you need to use 140 denier thread. The shell type back of the hopper we prepare from the body feather. This is a pheasant feather, but you can use guinea fowl, whatever, and normally I would do it in advance. So we're going to treat it with some nail varnish, Sally Hansen's nail varnish, or maybe clear glue, and stroke it out to form the body, to form the shell back, and we're going to let it dry. Normally, as I say, I would do it in advance so that it's ready when we get to this point in the fly. Once you've stroked it between your fingers with the varnish, it'll look like that, and we're going to use that for the back of the hopper. And then just trim off those butts. As neatly as possible. And then we're going to tie in our prepared feather, wrap it over the body, bind it down tightly, and trim that off. Now I think actually for the most part these fibres that tend to fall out, stick out of the wing are enough to imitate the legs, but if you want to add rubber legs, or I'm going to add some Wonder Wing legs, then you do that now. So we're going to tie in a couple of Wonder Wing legs just for the sake of completeness. We'll bend them later on. Just try to match them up reasonably well. Now just going to trim off the butts of those legs. And we're ready to start forming the head of the fly. The critical factor about the way these flies look is whether you get this collar right. The collar basically hides the bulk and the thread wraps that you've just tied in. If you get it wrong, it looks terribly ugly. You get it right, it really looks nice and balanced. So we're going to clean off some fine deer hair, and we're going to stack this lot. And we're going to form a collar. It's actually very difficult to spin hair here because you're wrapping on already tied material, and this is a much easier way of doing it. I don't know why other people don't show you to do this. Just push the hair over the hook, make 2 loose wraps and pull tight, and that'll give you a distribution of the hair all the way around the hook. We have a little bit more wriggling to get it. That's better. Here's a trick. Don't put too many wraps of thread here because it will show up. Just fold that hair back and bind it tight against it. There we go. And that'll give us a much neater finish when we get to the end of the fly. Now we're going to start forming the rest of the head, which we're going to spin to form a head that we can clip to shape. You don't need to stack this. You can even it up slightly. I prefer to cut the tips off usually when I do this. And do what we did before. Instead of trying to spin it, just push the hair over the hook, so it's all the way around the hook to start with. Make 2 wraps and pull tight. Make 1 more wrap in exactly the same place. Pull tight and force that hair back. And if there's space, which there is on this one, we're going to add just a little bit more hair. With this last bunch of hair, leave the points on it standing out long towards over the eye of the hook, and then when you spread it and spin it around the hook, you'll have long fibres sticking out this way, which makes it much easier to pull back and getting your whip finish without the hair getting in the way. Just going to whip finish that quickly. Hold those long fibres out the way. And there we go, and we're ready to start trimming the head of this fly. To trim the fly, I'm not going to go through the whole process on video, but you want to take initially 1 square cut across the top, 1 square cut on either side, and 1 square cut on the bottom. Do not aim to get the finished product to start with, or even the finished size. Once you've got to a rough shape, check that the hook is in the middle. This one actually isn't. There's more to be cut off my side than the camera side. That's better. And then the easiest thing I think is to remove it from the vise and trim it. So I'm going to take it out of the vise, trim it a little bit, and then we're going to look at it again. Got the fly back in the vise now. We've trimmed off to a degree. It's nowhere near finished, but we're getting the right shape now. It's critical that you get the shape right before you run out of hair. Don't keep cutting wildly. You should be able to preserve those lovely spikes of the collar by lifting up the long fibres to trim them without catching the pointed ends of the collar itself. The trick is to go carefully and slowly. We're getting there. Okay, I'm going to keep trimming a bit more when I look at it in a second. We've almost got to the end of the trimming now. You can make the head a bit smaller if you want to. Depends how bulky you want your hopper pattern to be. Get the odd fibre that's not supposed to be there. Kick up those collar fibres a little bit. All that really remains on this pattern is for me to bend those Wonderwing legs. I've trimmed the hackle off those legs now at the back, so you get this nice spiky effect, very reminiscent of a hopper's legs. But we're almost done, really. I'm just going to bend those with a hot needle. Obviously, if you tied in rubber legs, you don't need to do this. If you chose to ignore the legs, which I frequently do, you don't need to do this. Just warm the needle, bend the leg, and just bring the needle very close to the knee of that leg. Don't heat it up too hot, and don't go and press the needle red hot against the feather, because if you do, you'll burn right through it and you'll have spoilt your fly. That needs a little bit more attention to match it up. Trim off the rest. And there's our hopper. And there's our hopper pattern. It's a bit of a messy fly to tie. Compared to most of the flies in this book, it's an extremely troublesome thing to tie. But it isn't a fly that I use a great deal. When you're trying to drum up a big fish or pull one out of cover, or there really are a lot of hoppers around, though, this fly is worth its weight in gold, and it probably give you one of the best chances ever of getting big fish on dry fly, because even the biggest trout will come up for a morsel of this kind of calorie value.